welcome to Shalom Ottawa. You are dialed into the show that keeps you in the know about the personalities and events across Ottawa's Jewish community, as well as with our extended family in Israel. My name is Les Com, and as your host, I've got some fresh conversation for your head and your heart, stories you won't hear anywhere else. So keep your eyes on the road or your hands wrapped around a good cup of coffee or both. Sit back, relax, and join me in welcoming today's special guest, Yalla. At Shalom Ottawa, we're so happy to celebrate what we call the high holidays, Rosh Hashanah and Yom HaKippur. And, you know, the show that I'm a member of, KBI, is delighted to welcome back our rabbi of two cities. It's like a tale of two cities, Rabbi Baruch Frydman-Kohl, who has kindly joined us this morning. I believe you are in Ottawa, not in Jerusalem. Is that correct, Rabbi?
That is Good morning. I usually split between Jerusalem and Toronto, but for these high holidays, I'm here in Ottawa.
Oh, excellent. Well, as I mentioned, we're very happy to have you back in Ottawa. And I have to say for our listeners, let's clear up one issue right at the beginning. As you are a self-described reverse snowbird. In the summer, you go to Israel, to your residence in Jerusalem. And in the winter, you come back to Canada, Toronto, Ottawa. What's going on with that? How did that happen?
Well, first of all, we're citizens both of Canada and of Israel. And we try to split the year into quarters. So we're in Jerusalem for 3 months, and then in Canada for 3 months, Jerusalem for 3, and Canada for 3. And we're in Jerusalem in the summertime in particular because our grandchildren are on school break. And one of the ways that we can help our family is by taking them after camp, or in weeks when they don't have camp, they go to Camp Saba and Savta. And that's pretty typical for Israeli families, to rely on other family members, particularly during the summer and particularly in August. We come back to Canada usually in the late autumn, after the autumn holidays, after Sukkot. And we're usually here through the early part of the winter and return to Jerusalem for the early spring. We then come back to Canada for Pesach so that we can be with our Canadian family for the holidays and then go back to Jerusalem in the summer.
All right. So this is a complex procedure broken into quarterly bits and bytes. It's all about the grandchildren. And
about the cat.
We had the joy of seeing the bird migrations at the Hula Valley. And now that you've explained your migration pattern, I understand it. I think we can all understand it. But I just hope that the cranes and the other amazing birds don't get wind of this new twist and start changing up their migration patterns spring and fall, because that would just throw everything off.
I don't think so. I've also been up to Hula, to the nature reserve that actually is named for a former prime minister of ours, Stephen Harper. Mm-hmm. And it's really quite remarkable to watch the birds. They follow a pattern that particularly is highlighted on around Tu B'Shvat, because there's a tradition to go out and feed birds on Tu B'Shvat, and a midrash that when the people of Israel left Egypt, the birds who had been attended to by the kids, by the Israelite children, were quite concerned, and then they were able to be fed by the children along the way, and that's their migration pattern.
I did not know that. That's a lovely, lovely midrash. So turning to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the period that we're now in, sometimes called the Yamim Noraim,
Let's get the year. Let's talk about the year first. In the Hebrew calendar, in the Jewish calendar, we're now starting the year 5786.
Correct.
5786. Yes. Okay. Help us out here. How did that get counted? What is year zero in this concept? And when do the people of Israel, as you've just mentioned, come on the scene in this calendar?
Well, I think that the calendar goes back to a early medieval, late rabbinic tradition that attempts to count how many years there were from Genesis till Noah, till Abraham, to Moses, to entering the land, and then the rule of the kings, etc. And out of that traditional counting, eventually you get to, in this case, 5,786. So ostensibly, it is from creation. Most of us don't actually believe that it's from creation. First of all, the world is billions of years old. The universe is billions old. So we take this as 5786 years on the, I'll call it on the Jewish calendar from when we begin to note history, which certainly begins before us.
Yes, Bereshit, Genesis.
Now there are what are called gematria or chronograms, where biblical phrases are counted, and each letter is counted so as to reach the number of 786. Usually the thousands are missed. So there are any number of chronograms or gematria for this year, 5786. Let me just give you an example from the book of Bereshit, Vayira, Vayomar Manorah, from Genesis 28:17. He was afraid and said, "How awesome is this place?" Or also from Genesis, Katadim, I'm unworthy of all the kindness. And people sometimes would sign letters or date letters with these chronograms, with this gematria, in order to indicate the year, but not only to give a date, but also to give a message. So, for example, from the book of Jonah, which we're going to read on Yom Kippur, Shavati, I cried out, in Jonah chapter 2. So you have different ways that we signify the year, not only in terms of numbers, in terms of the Hebrew letters Tashpav, but also in terms of sentences or phrases from the Bible.
I did not know that. And I did go to what we call Jewish school, Jewish day school. And I must have missed that lesson. I suspect they didn't cover it quite that way. So fascinating. Thank you for sharing that. So if we can think of you, as a rabbi of two cities, and we understand that you're in Canada for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, but you're obviously in touch with your family in Israel, in Jerusalem, perhaps specifically. How do the observance or the celebration of the holiday, how do they differ between Israel and Ottawa or Toronto? Or is it just very, very similar and we're all doing more or less the same thing? What do you think?
Well, on one level, we are doing more or less the same thing. But things begin, I would say, approximately a month before Rosh Hashanah in two different ways. For Ashkenazic Jews, we begin sounding the shofar, and you'll hear in the neighborhood, like just casually, somebody is blowing shofar. We begin to recite a psalm, LeDavid Hashem Orim, the eternal is my light and my salvation. That goes on in the Ashkenazi community and in the Sephardi community, and it goes on here in Canada as well. In the Sephardi community as well, they begin to recite Slichot, penitential prayers already 30 days before the holidays, whereas Ashkenazi Jews are only usually at least 4 days before Rosh Hashanah. But there's a difference in the tenor of these slichot, because the Sephardim that's the Mizrahi also, Mizrahi Jews.
Okay, I was wondering about the Mizrahi.
Bring much joy. So even though the words are of penitence, the melodies are of celebration. And there are many, many opportunities. There are concerts, there are evening gatherings for that. So that's one thing that's different from Jerusalem or from Israel to Canada. Another thing that's different is the shopping. Beginning about a month in advance, you start to see sales for food that's particular to the holiday, whether it's pomegranates or dates or date syrup or honey. As you get closer, there'll be sales on fish heads and on goat heads that people will put onto their table. But you'll also see a tremendous amount of disposable flatware and cutlery, because most people want to dress up for the holiday, or they're going to have a lot of company for the holiday, and they need to have more plates and aluminum and everything else. So on some level, and this is true of Passover as well, it's an environmental disaster. The other thing that you begin to see is signs everywhere wishing people a Shana Tova. And you begin to see in the malls, again, sales on food and on other kinds of things that you'll want to have for the holiday. For example, already a few weeks ago, people are beginning to purchase, if they're going to need electrical equipment, or if they're going to need a refrigerator or a stove. Often that'll be done before the holidays. Some will be like right after Rosh Hashanah. All the equipment for Sukkot starts coming out and being sold in pop-ups as well as in existing stores.
Yeah.
So there's a real sense. Think of Christmas in Canada and how the commercial market changes and the music you start hearing from media, and all of that is comparable to the changes that occur in Israel as we start moving toward the high holidays.
Okay, very interesting. You've described it very well, including an analogy there with Christmas. You know, the disposable flatware, I totally get that. And environmentally, it's an issue, as you say, although we're seeing in Canada more and more bamboo flatware showing up, which is supposed to be more sustainable and better environmentally. So maybe bamboo will start showing up in Israel as well at some point. But I have to go back,
Les, I'm going to interrupt you just for a second.
Okay.
Because the bamboo stuff has begun to come out. A few years ago, there was legislation to raise the price of disposable one-use material.
Yes.
When the current government came in, it rescinded that law because the Haredi parties that joined the government said it was hurting their community financially.
Okay. Well, here, I guess our answer many years ago was just recycling, a lot of recycling. The blue boxes, which have been in use for many years, and a lot of plastics get recycled that way. So, but I have to go back just a bit further in your comments. Okay, fish head, I'm not shocked, but did I hear you say goat's head? What is up with that? Wow.
There's
People really put a goat's head on their table? And is this the scapegoat? Is it a cousin of the scapegoat?
No, not at all.
Why do the goats get picked on?
There's a whole tradition of what are called simanim, or I'll call them indications for the year to come. And they are always related to some idea. So, for example, honey and have a sweet year. So also people might have carrots. And carrots is because in Hebrew you say, may the evil decree be torn up. Torn up in Hebrew is gazer, and the word for carrot is gezer.
Ah, yes.
You have word plays that are related to these oracles for the year. And one of them is that you should be the head and not the tail. So people will put on their table something that physically represents the head. I have an old acquaintance back in the States who said that when he was growing up, that frightened him the most.
Well, to have a head on the table, and especially for those of us who have seen the original movie, The Godfather, where a horse's head plays a very unfortunate role, yeah, that would be a little disturbing. Yeah, that's really amazing. I almost have trouble visualizing a goat's head on the table, but head, rush, okay, better than being the tail, as we say. All right.
Well, this year, there are some others that relate to what's been going on in contemporary times. So, for example, kids are saying, well, we should have ice cream on Rosh Hashanah, because the word for ice cream is glida. And then they say, sheyaglidu kol pitzaenu, may all our wounds be healed. The word glida is related to the word for healing. So you have people who develop their own, not just traditional ones, to convey messages. Take hummus. I was at a table here and people said, well, let us enjoy this hummus and may there not be Hamas.
So that's here in Ottawa. So creativity abounds here in Ottawa, which maybe we've underestimated. That's very, very innovative. And as far as the ice cream in Israel, trust the kids to come up with that, a way to get ice cream involved. I wonder if they're using AI for suggestions, but perhaps they are, perhaps they aren't. Very creative. Just a quick comparison with what we would call the secular New Year, January the 1st. It's commonplace here. Many people like to make resolutions. It's, a fresh start for that, for the calendar year, as we call it. Make a list of resolutions, things they want to improve, things they want to stop doing, perhaps. Is that a thing in Israel too? At Rosh Hashanah, is that a thing to make resolutions for?
It absolutely is a thing to make resolutions. At the same time, the rabbis warn, for example, Kol Nidre, don't make those vows because you may not be able to fulfill them. So yes, the natural impulse of people is indeed to make those kinds of resolutions. And the rabbinic warning is, don't take too much on yourself. Try to work on yourself. Try to improve who you are. Try to avoid bad behavior. But don't make it too much of a resolution, of a neder, of a deep promise.
Okay, which sounds very sensible. Don't get carried away. Good advice. Good advice. In closing this delightful conversation, Rabbi, during these high holidays, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, if you had to pick one message for this period for our listeners to take on board, what might that message be?
I would say don't despair, despite what we're experiencing in Canada and in Israel. Stay engaged, be advocates for Jewish causes and for Israel. Use the tradition to strengthen yourself and hold on to the rope of hope.
The rope of hope. I love it. And what a positive, constructive, go forward message. We appreciate that very much. And we appreciate you. And thank you so much for your time this morning and a great conversation.
It's my pleasure. And I'll give you one last chronogram, one last gematria. which comes from the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 3, 4. And that is, remember, 5786. When you write it out, the 8, the code, and a time to dance. And as you know, the Nova Festival and survivors have said, we will dance again. And that's true of the whole Jewish people.
Thank you so much for that. Rabbi Baruch Frydman-Kohl, it was a delight speaking with you this morning. Thank you for joining us, and we wish you and yours Gemar Chatima Tova.
Gemar Chatima Tova. We're hoping that it should be a better year.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
So, how was that for you? Did you enjoy today's show? Drop us a line and tell us. Don't hold back on your feelings. It's not healthy. While you're at it, share your ideas for future guests and topics to keep the Ottawa and Israel stories flowing. And since you're a sharing person, let your friends know about Shalom Ottawa. Don't let them miss out. Of course, be sure to follow us on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, or wherever you get your podcasts. That way, you'll be the first to know when our next episode drops. Until the next time, Lehitraot and Shalom Ottawa.